Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satguru Brahma Vidmayam. We'll chant verse 1. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambujanmani Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmani. So we have started a new text called Tattva Vivekaha of the Panchadashi series. So this is Panchadashi chapter 1 called Tattva Vivekaha. And with every class, we will chant the first verse as Mangalacharana. Last week, we covered verses 1, 2, and we touched upon verse 3. The first verse is Mangalacharana dedicated to the Guru. And who is the Guru of Swami Vidyaranya is Sri Shankarananda. So this can also be seen as this Guru, this can be seen as Bhagavan. So Namaha Sri Shankarananda, prostrations to that Guru, the lotus feet of the Guru that is ever untouched by all of the things that happen in the world. What is the Guru's one work? Eka Karma in the second line. The Guru's one work is to swallow. To swallow what? This crocodile. To swallow this graha, this crocodile. And what is this crocodile? This crocodile is of Mahamoha. It's this crocodile of delusion and its effects. So ignorance and its effects. So we prostrate, before starting this text, we prostrate to the Guru, whose one work in life is to swallow up that crocodile of delusion. And when such a Guru comes to us, Puja Gurudev, then we are very fortunate, because that means we're on the way. The second verse, we talked about Anubandha Chatushtaya. Anubandha Chatushtaya is the fourfold factors that tie us to the text. So it tells us why are we studying this text. So the first is Adhikari. Who is a qualified student to study this text? Nirmala Chetasam, those who have purified their minds through the Seva of the Guru. And we saw that the Seva of the Guru is not simply feeding the Guru or doing things for the Guru. The real Seva for the Guru is being empty and open to receive this knowledge, and the vichara, to also contemplate on this knowledge, to dwell on it, to contemplate on it, so that it becomes one with us. Remember, the Guru has no interest in life other than our own evolution. If that Guru has any other interest, then that is not a Guru. So this is the seva that we can do for the Guru. And of course, in the physical plane, provide whatever is required for that Guru to be able to keep giving this knowledge, to be able to keep sustaining it so that more people benefit. So this is the Adhikari, the ones with a pure mind obtained by the seva to the Guru.
The Vishaya, or the subject matter of this text, is Tattva Viveka. Viveka here doesn't mean discrimination like in Viveka Chudamani. Here Viveka means inquiry. Inquiry into Tattva, into that reality. So this is what we are going to study. What is the prayojana, or what is the goal of this text? Sukha Bodhaya, we see in verse 2. This text, Swami Vidyaranya, he makes it very easy for us to comprehend reality in various ways. When we just study Panchadashi, I'm very fortunate to study under Swami Advayananda Ji, and the way Swami Vidyaranya Ji writes this text is very, very beautiful. He really comes to the details of Vedanta. So even those things that are not clear to us, they become clear through him. And finally, what is a sambandha? So why should I pick up this book? Because vidhiyate, this book is that which will give the inquiry into tattva vivekaha. This inquiry is conducted through this book. So therefore, this book is the revealer, and this knowledge is revealed. So in that way, we have covered verses 1 and 2. Then we touched upon verse 3. So I'll read verse 3, then you can repeat, and then we can read together and we'll go through it. A very beautiful verse. So now we are coming into a bunch. So verses 3 to 7, right away he goes into the nature of reality as Sat and Chit. So this is one topic. Shabdasparshadayo vedyaha Vaichitrya jagare prithak Tato vibhakta tat samvita ekarupyana bhidyate. Shabdasparshadayo vedyaha Vaichitrya jagare prithak Tato vibhakta tat samvita aikarupyana bhedyate. So he says many things in this verse. Point number 1, Shabda Sparshadayaha Vedyaha. Shabda, sound, Sparsha, touch, etc. Vedyaha are known. So objects are known. How are they known? Vaichitriyat, because due to their peculiarities or differences. And where are they known? Jagare, in the waking state, as pritak. They're known as different. Tataha vibhakta tat samvita. From that, what is different is samvit. Samvit here means consciousness. Samyak veti iti samvit. That which knows well is consciousness. Aika rupyat na bhidyate. And that is just one undifferentiated consciousness. It doesn't differ. So if we read the translation, in the waking state, the sense objects such as sound, touch, and so on, due to their peculiarities, are known to be different from each other. But the consciousness of these objects, which is different from them, does not differ due to its homogeneity being of one nature. So point number 1, all objects are experienced. How? Their properties are actually experienced. So sound, touch, sight, smell, taste, all of this is experienced. And nobody can deny this. We experience this every single day. And these objects, not only are they experienced, but they're in a whole variety. So sound is very different from taste. Taste is very different from touch. Touch is very different from sight. So each property is different from the other. Not only is each property different from the other, but what we notice that in sound itself, there's so many different kinds of sounds. There's the sound of nature, the sound of birds chirping, the sound of an ambulance if you're in New York City, the sound of water in the river. There's so many different kinds of sounds. In sight, there's so many different kinds of sights. There's a sight of a computer, there's a sight of a sunset, there's a sight of a book. So objects are known and they are different. These properties are different. Not only are the different properties different from each other, as sound, touch, etc., but in that property, there's also differences. So this is what we find in waking state. And the definition of waking state we saw last week, indriyehi arthopalapti. When the sense organs perceive sense objects, that's called waking state. Now, what's the next point? Point number 3. So point number 1, objects are known. Point number 2, objects are different, various. Point number 3, the subject is different from the object. So it says, tato vibhakta tat samvid. That subject is different from the object. So just because I know this computer, I don't become the computer. In fact, the fact that I know a computer means I'm different from it. When you know something, you're different from it. So the fact that I know this pencil means I'm different from this pencil. That's the difference with samvit. And the thing is, this pencil is like this body. It's the same thing. This is known. This is also known. So not only is the body known, the mind is known, the intellect is known, the ego is also known. So different from that which is known is that ultimate knower. Different from the object is the subject. That is called samvit. So every single thing that we can perceive, taste, touch, smell, experience, that is called object. Idam, this. Everything that we say, this is an object. But different from that is samvit, the subject. And so therefore that samvit doesn't have the properties of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, because it's completely different from that. And that samvit is able to be aware of all of these properties. That the eyes are not aware of the ears. The ears are not aware of the tongue. These are not aware of each other. They're inert. But that samvit is different. And what else about that samvit? It is changeless. This samvit is not only different, but it is changeless. That's why it says, aikarupya na bhidyate. So guess what happens is that even when there are different things being known, being experienced, that awareness does not change. So for now, I know a pencil. Then I know a book. Then I know a bottle. I know so many things. The things are changing. The objects are changing. But that awareness is not changing. It's changeless. You may put whatever object you want to put in front of it, but it's absolutely changeless. That's called samvit. So what have we established here? In the waking state, there is something. The objects, although the objects are different and they're gross objects, there is something which knows those objects. There is the subject, different from the object. And that subject is changeless. This is what happens in waking state. Everything that Vidyaranyaji is saying, if we just observe our waking state, we will see all of this. We don't really need the book. But the problem is we don't observe our waking state or dream state. So that's why the book will tell us, this is what you're experiencing. Think about it, look deeply, and you yourself will see. Now, what happens in dream state? So here, let us see verse number 4. Tatha swapnetra vedyam tu nastheram jagare sthiram tadbhedostastayo samvit ekaroopanabhidyate. Tatha swapnetra vedyam tu nastheram jagare sthiram tadbhedo tastayo samvit ekaroopanabhidyate. So what is happening here? He says tatha. So is it in dream state. Swapne. Swapne means dream state. Atra, in this dream state, vedyam. Objects are also known. But how? Nastira. Not as stable as jagare stira. Not as stable as in waking. Tad bhedaha ataha tayoho. So therefore, the difference, ataha, therefore, tad bheda, the difference, tayoho, between the two is that in waking state, the objects are stira, more stable. The dream state, they're astira. But samvid eka rupa, that samvid or that consciousness is just one consciousness, na bidhyate. It doesn't differ in the waking state and the dream state. So here it says, so is the case in the dream state. In the dream state, the objects of knowledge are not permanent, whereas in the waking state, they are permanent. So there's a difference between the waking and dream states, but in both these states, consciousness does not differ. It is homogeneous. So what is it saying? In waking, we experience gross objects. So we can touch, we can feel, we can taste. It's the experience of our sense organs with actual sense objects. What happens in dream? What happens in dream is that the objects are very subtle. So it's as though the mind creates these subtle sense organs with which to experience. Because of course our sense organs aren't active there in dream state. So we experience not gross objects, but subtle objects. So in waking state, they have more of, you can say, sthirata, stability. But in dream state, it is a subtle object. It's a subtle object created by the mind. What we'll also find is that in the waking state, there is a higher possibility of us experiencing the same thing again and again. For example, there's a higher possibility of us experiencing the same class every Wednesday at the certain time. But in dream state, the possibility of us experiencing something again and again is there, but very, very minimal. And we see that in the dream state, it can, compared to the waking state, it can last maybe 2 minutes, waking time. But in dream time, it's a lot. So therefore, dream is a little bit different with waking in terms of the object. In terms of the object, it's astira. It is not as stable. But that doesn't mean that dream and waking are not the same reality. Waking is unreal and dream is also unreal. But that is a separate point. At the ultimate analysis of Vedanta, waking is also a dream. Dream is a dream, waking is a longer dream. That's all. They're both a dream. Why? Because they're both experienced. As long as anything is experienced, it is an object and it is not the subject. So in the ultimate analysis, we find that waking and dream are dream only. But in this particular verse, he's just trying to tell us that, look, even if the objects are different, look at the subject. The subject is still the same. So what happens? Waking state, gross objects. This is samvit, the consciousness. Dream state happens. What happens? Subtle objects. But that consciousness is still the same. So that consciousness that was there in waking is the exact same consciousness that's there in dream. This is what he says. The difference is where in the object, but not in the subject. The subject is ever the same. Now he says, what happens in deep sleep state? What is it that happens in deep sleep? So let us see here, verse number 5. Suptothitasya saushupta tamo bodho bhavet smritihi sa chava buddha vishaya avabuddham tattada tamaha. Suptothitasya saushupta tamo bodho bhavet smritihi sa chava buddha vishaya avabuddham tattada tamaha. Okay, so what does he say here? Suptothitasya means for the one who has woken up from deep sleep. Suptaha, the one who was prior sleeping. Uttitasya, the one who was woken up from deep sleep. So shupta tamo bodha. There is an awareness of that experience. There's that awareness that something has happened there. The awareness of ignorance. Or we could say the experience of ignorance or experience of absence. And how do they know this? Bhavet smritihi, because of remembrance. It's there, bhavet, because of remembrance. Sa cha avabuddha vishaya. And that of the objects which are known, avabuddham tat tada tamaha. That was known in deep sleep. So let us see the translation here. There is a remembrance of ignorance for a person woken up from deep sleep. This remembrance is of the objects known. Therefore, in deep sleep, that ignorance was known. What happens in deep sleep? What happens exactly in deep sleep is this. In deep sleep, the senses fold up and the mind goes to its causal state. So therefore, we do not experience anything because the senses are folded up, the mind is folded up. They are sleeping. They've gone to their causal state. This is what happens in deep sleep. So therefore, there's an experience, but there's an experience of nothingness. There's an experience of blankness because there is no object. There is no object. The only thing there is just that ignorance. There's no gross object. There's no subtle object. The only thing in deep sleep there is ignorance. What happens is when one wakes up from deep sleep, we don't have to think about it. We know we slept. And nobody wakes up from deep sleep and says, I didn't sleep. I don't know what happened. It's very intuitive. We know we went to sleep. Sleep is not pratyaksha. It's not something that we experience with our senses because our senses are folded up. And it's not something also that we infer that, oh, I must have gone to sleep. No, we know. You know you went to sleep. And besides, all inference or anumana is based on pratyaksha. All inference is based on perception. When we see there's a fire, there's a fire, there's a fire. How do you know there's a fire? Because I've seen smoke before. I've seen smoke and I saw fire. And therefore I can say, if I see smoke now, there's a fire. So I'm seeing something, then I'm inferring something. But here, we're not seeing anything. We're not perceiving anything. So therefore, we're not inferring that we went to sleep. We know it's an actual experience because when we wake up, we remember, I went to sleep. I went to sleep. And you can only remember something if you yourself experienced it. We cannot remember what anybody else experienced. What another person experienced, we can't remember. But what we ourselves experienced, then we remember. So when deep sleep happens, everything is folded up. So there's no notion of anything. There's no notion of the world. There's no notion of the ego. There's no notion of anything. But what happens is when we wake up, we recollect. Bhaved smritihi means we recollect that there was an experience of absence. There was an experience of nothingness. We are able to recollect that. So what is he saying here? He says, when you wake up, you know that you had that experience, right? So in waking, we had that experience with all gross objects. In dream, we had that experience with all subtle objects. In deep sleep, we had that experience of blankness, that experience of ignorance. We had that experience. How do we know we had it? Because when we wake up, we remember, oh, I experienced nothing. So what is changing here in the three states is the objects are changing. The kind of objects are changing, but the subject never changes. It stays the same. It's like a thread that has woven through it. Huh? So that same awareness in waking is same in dream, same in deep sleep. It's like a thread. What's moving, what's happening, just the states are moving, just the objects are changing, but the same samvit is always there. If you take any state. This he makes very clear now in the 6th verse. This is now where he concludes waking, dream, deep sleep, that it's the same consciousness. So let's see this verse. Sabodho vishayad bhinnaha nabodhat swapna bodhavat evam sthanatrayepyeka samviddat Vaddinantare. Sabodho vishayad binnaha nabodhat swapna bodhavat evam sthanatrayepyeka samvittat vaddinantare. So what happens here? Says saha, that bodha, that consciousness, vishayat binnaha, is different from the object, bodhat swapna bodhavat, but na bodha, but that consciousness is not different from the consciousness in dream. He's talking about the consciousness of deep sleep. It's different from that ignorance, that experience of blankness, but it's not different from the consciousness of dream. Evam sthanatraye, in this way, in the 3 states, eka samvit, there's only one consciousness, tadvad dinantare, and this in other days also. Now the implication of this verse is very deep. If you and I can just understand this very clearly, we're absolutely done. Nothing else is required. Just stay with that. Just stay with that. Now see here, in the Upanishads, there is one very beautiful verse in Kaivalya Upanishad. And it goes like this. Trishu dhamasu yad bhogyam bhogta bhogascha yad bhavet tebhyo vilakshana sakshi chinmatroham sada shiva. What is it saying? Look, in the waking state, let us say there are three things in the waking state, right? So we know that there's already the bhogya, the objects. We've discussed this very clearly. There are gross objects in the waking state. What else is there in the waking state? There's the waker, right? Bhokta. We call it bhokta. The waker is there in waking state. What else is there in waking state? The experience of waking is there, right? Bhoga, what we call bhoga, that experience of waking is there. These three are there. What happens when dream happens, when the dream state happens? All these are gone. All these are absolutely gone. All the gross objects, gone. The waker, gone. The waking world, gone. It's gone. Then you come to dream state. The dream, the bhogya, the subtle objects. Then you have the dreamer. The dreamer is there. Then you have the dreaming experience or the dream world. It's very real in dream. In dream, the dream appears very real. So in waking, of course, the waking will appear real. Very real. When deep sleep happens, what happens? All gone. They're just all gone, just like that. It's just all gone. What do you have then? Bhogya. Bhogya there, that experience of what we call ignorance, ajnana, right? Then that deep sleep, that experience. Then that deep sleeper is there. We call prajna. That's there in deep sleep. The minute that waking state happens, all three are again gone. Now, what is this just telling you? That all these objects, all these personalities, even this ego, that waker, dreamer, deep sleeper, even this ego, even all of our experiences, they are just coming and going. This is what we call anvaya vyatireka. There's that presence, anvaya, of that sakshi, or that samvit, vyatireka of all of these things. Vyatireka, absence of the objects, absence of that particular ego, absence of the experience. It comes, goes, comes, goes, comes, goes. So therefore, how real could that be? Could that be you? No, Vidyaranyaji says, that's not you. There's just different objects. There's just different ego personalities. There's just different experiences. That's all it is. It's just different. But the subject, that's the same. That is you. That is what you hold on to. That samvit, he says, dinantare, every day this is happening. Every day this is happening. I told our class in the Bhagavad Gita, I told them that our rishis have told us this, that it is like you have gold buried in your house, a treasure of gold buried in your house, but you and I don't know. And every day we are walking over this gold. Every day we're just walking on top of it, walking on top of it, trying to figure out how to get money, how to get rich, how to get contentment, how to be full. And we're just walking on top of the gold. That's all we're doing. And, someday, if we only just dig in and open, then we'll realize, oh my God, we have everything that we need. Why even run? Why even walk? Why go here and there? We have every single thing we need. We really don't need to go anywhere. Huh? The same way, this happens dinantare. Every day this happens. Waking, dream, deep sleep, every day this happens. But how many of us actually pay close attention to our experience? How many of us actually just dwell on it and say, None of us. We are walking on this goal that's buried underneath. But if one day, at one time, just stay there, just be there, that's enough. You won't want to move anymore. Huh? That is called samvit. Dinantare, every day it is there. There's not a moment that it's not. And to take this thought even further, now he explains that this chit, this pure awareness that illumines all these three states, that is also sat. That chit is exactly sat. And how he does this is in verse number 7. Masabdayugakalpeshu Gatagam Yeshwanekadha Nodeti nastametyeka Samvedesha Swayam Prabha. So I'm just smiling. Their name is in the verse. Masam Kayuga Kalpeshu Gatagam Yeshwane Kadha Nodeti nastametyeka Samvedesha Swayam Prabha. Says Masa. Masa means month. Masa, month. Abda. Abda means year. Yuga means all of these ages. Kalpeshu, in the cycles of creation, ages of months, of years. Gata agami eshu. Gataha means in the past, agami, in the future, in what's going to come. Agami. Agamyeshu. Anekadha, in many ways. Na udeti, it never rises. Na astam eti, it never sets. And it's eka, it's one, samvit. And this is swayam prabha, it is self-effulgent. So I'll read 6 and then 7 because I didn't read 6 earlier. So I'll read 6 and then 7. That consciousness in the deep sleep state is different from the object, i.e. ignorance, but not different from itself, consciousness, as is the consciousness in dream state. Thus, even in all three states, consciousness is one. It is so on other days also. This one self-effulgent consciousness in many ways, in the past and future, month, year, ages, and in the cycles of creation, neither rises nor sets. So what is it saying here? This chit is sat because it's the same. It never ever changes. It doesn't change in all the years, in all the months, in all the kalpas. In any way, it never changes. So this changeless awareness is what you call sat chit. This is exactly what it is. Now, very beautiful, he says, past and present, it's the same. Months, days, years, it's the same. It's a very, very famous verse. And he says it never rises and it never sets. This is very important because what rises and sets is the mind. In waking state, the mind rises. Mind rises and it's full form. And then in deep sleep, the mind sets. So that's why he's saying here, it doesn't rise, it doesn't set. It's not that mind. It's not that ego. But it is just one. It is that one changeless awareness. And that one is Swayam Prabha. It is self-effulgent. Self-effulgent means there's nothing else required to know it. If you think that there's something else that should know this consciousness, then we'll have anavastha dosha. Which consciousness knows this consciousness? And then another consciousness will know that consciousness. And it will just go on and on and on and on. So it is self-effulgent. It is like if this room was very dark, you turn on the light and everything is lit. You don't need anything else to light that light. The same way as consciousness is Swayam Prabha. If you say another consciousness needs to illumine this consciousness, then this consciousness becomes inert. Then consciousness becoming inert doesn't make sense. So therefore, in this way, he establishes Sat, Chit, Ananda. Ananda is yet to be established in the next verse. Sat and Chit. So now I will just revise what we have done today. Then we'll see if there are any questions. And then we'll just spend some time just contemplating on this, soaking this in. Okay? So today we have done verses 3 to 7. And in verse 3 to 7, what becomes very clear is that there are 3 states. And in these 3 states, there are different objects. The gross objects in waking, subtle in dream, and the ajnana or ignorance, what we call in deep sleep. And though the objects might differ, that subject doesn't differ. It's exactly the same. So there are different objects. The subject is different from the objects, but that subject is also always the same in and through the 3 states. The object, the waker, the experience disappear in dream. Objects of dream, the dreamer, the dream experience disappears in deep sleep. And so everything disappears when you take it from another state. But that samvid doesn't disappear. It's there all the time. And therefore that awareness is also changeless. We call sat. And you can say months, years, all of that. It's still that one same consciousness. Okay, so I think this much is good to just dwell on, because then the topic will be Ananda, and that's a little bit different way of thinking. So today we will just stop here. I will pause this now. If there are any questions,